Hey, Tim, appreciate you hopping on. Just to get everyone introduced, this is going to be an interview with Tim from Elite Call to talk, more about just call center, inbounding versus outbounding for, our clients, our contractor clients, but also, any, owners of home services businesses that are, working to build their business, really build out their call center operations and just get a sense of, what are the things, to be paying attention to, what's kind of on the cutting edge and, where to be focusing, your time on in terms of what moves the needle. So I'll turn it to Tim. I mean, Tim, would love to have you give us like an intro on yourself, Elite Call, what you guys do, and I'll let you take it away from there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Super excited to share some wisdom and insight on the topic of outbound. But yeah, Tim Pinsel, Director of Sales at Elite Call. We've been blessed to be doing outbound call center work for the last 25 years, all US based and a variety of different verticals, home service, home improvement being a majority of what we do. And so today is going to be a lot less of pitching the Elite Call, more so sharing with the viewers on what works in outbound today, what doesn't work, and like you said, like what's the best systems and processes to put in place to really be as effective and efficient as you can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And, maybe as a just a high level starting point, we can talk about like, okay, what is kind of inbound versus outbound? And, at what point does it start to make sense to build out, kind of an inbound call center? And, at what point does, outbounding as a strategy
Mhm.
begin to make sense?
Yeah, so inbound, obviously, it's more on the reaction side. You're waiting for something to come to you. You're reacting to something to that's coming to you. Where outbound is a lot more on the proactive side. I think we talked about this when we first met. A lot of home service companies make the mistake where they try to intertwine the two with their internal teams, and it's
Absolutely.
not. Yeah, it's not the most effective or efficient thing to be doing right out of the gates. That's something that you should look into if you are doing that of trying to separate the two, because inbound, beyond just being reactive, it's a lot more customer service oriented, where outbound is a lot more sales oriented.
So, I mean, in terms of like just high level, in terms of outbounding, what is, the opportunity here? Like, where would you, how would you kind of quantify, if you were to assign like a percentage of your lead
Mhm.
generation, right? Like, what is kind of the opportunity and really like how big is it for like the average contractor? Let's just say someone who's, it's not like, really like small operation, but let's just say like, you're running a $5 million dollar shop, you're growing. Like, what is
Mhm.
the kind of, opportunity you would say is out there for someone who's not doing any outbound at all?
Yeah, on average, there's at least multiple six figures sitting in most people's databases. If you're a home service contractor and you're in one of these CRM platforms like Housecall Pro or Service Titan, just go in there and look at your open estimates folder and look at the number of revenue that just pops up in that alone. And that's one possibility of outbound. There's a wide variety of outbound that you can be doing. A past customer engagement, fulfill service boards, if you offer memberships, calling them up to get more of those enrollments, generating new install demand. And so if you can get the right processes in place and have the right teams like we just talked about earlier, if you're not doing outbound, you absolutely need to, because the fortune isn't always in the next new lead coming in. It's oftentimes what's just sitting in most people's databases. And that's going underutilized in a majority of businesses a lot more than it should be. And so if you just take a step back and look a little bit deeper into it, you're leaving so much revenue on the table. For larger shops that we work with, we've covered millions in revenue that are sitting there for them. So um, it's mind blowing to me when these contractors aren't capturing what's sitting in their base, because it's not that high of hanging fruit. It's pretty low hanging fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, I think from the CFO perspective, when we're working with our clients, right? It's always a question of like, what is the best use for the next dollar spent,
Hmm.
right? And it's like, if you're pushing like really all new leads, all new business, I mean, that
Right,
is the most, by definition, the most expensive, source of business that you can get. And,
of
if
course.
you can retarget or reacquire an existing customer, that's always going to be, just a better channel. So it sounds like it's a mix, right? It's just a tool to
Yeah,
have in the toolbox, and you're running that alongside, whatever else you have going on to
exactly. Yeah.
really optimize,
hmm
optimize what you're doing,
And
so
and
to
the, and the
speak.
revenue captured when you said, can you put a number behind it? That's always going to vary from campaign type. I mean, if you're strategic and you're running your higher ticket offers to your customer base, that's going to lead to a lot higher return on investment that month than if your main focus is just to try filling your boards up, maybe at like a lower average ticket that month. But it's the consistency over time that's going to allow you to get those six figures, potentially even seven figures that's sitting in your database.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, yeah, just to, kind of just dig into just, thinking about kind of numbers like high level, like let's say you were just a guy doing, 5 million, 5 million a year on average, or,
Uh huh.
let's say like 10 million a year. Like, in terms of like, let's say you have a certain number of leads that you're getting in, it's been pretty consistent,
Yeah.
right? In terms of like what percentage, like let's say we're just talking all new leads, like what percentage of business, like, can you like recapture, would you say relative to, your existing business development activity as a whole? Like, is it
Yeah.
5%? Is it like 20%? Or what's like the general range look like?
Well, a lot of people when they're doing outbounds, they're just calling their club members to get them booked for something they're already paying for because they feel that's the easiest route to take with their internal reps. They get by with it, but they're not going after like the non-members or inactive customers. And so I'll touch on that because usually that's like the most underutilized data in people's sets.
Mhm.
Right now for Elite Call, we average a 6.2% on customers not on maintenance plans in the HVAC space, generating tune-ups, memberships, and installs. And so if you're running your internal shops right now, I would look what you're at internally. For us engaging non-members 3 to 18 months since they've last been serviced, we're averaging that 6%. That's
Wow.
typically a lot higher than what the norm is. Most internal teams, if you look at it, are like 1 to 3%. And so people might be asking, well, how do I get to that jump? How do I have that increase? And it's about having the right people in place, training continuously, the right scripting. A lot of organizations think it's as simple as throwing people on the phone and I'm going to make outreach calls and I'm outbounding, but it's a lot more sophisticated than that. It needs to be. You need to have QA, you need to have scorecards, you need to have defined KPIs for your agents, and so if you have those, that's going to really boost up the overall conversion. But beyond just the non-members at 6%, I was talking about, we're oftentimes averaging like a 3 to 3.5% across the board. And that can be everything from cross-selling plumbing customer to an HVAC. It could be generating new install opportunities, closing open estimates,
Yeah.
creative campaigns. I mean, it varies from different campaign types. If anyone's watching, I'd be happy to share what conversion metrics we're at. Not necessarily just to use Elite Call, but more how can we help you? Because what are you at and how can we really ramp that up for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And, keep in mind, I mean, if it's like a 3% or a 6%, right? I mean, you're selling probably, some of the higher ticket stuff. So, if you
Uh-huh.
think of like actually as a percentage of revenue overall, it's like if you're doing like 10 million, it's probably going to be, it's probably going to be more than, 6% of that, right? Because,
Yeah.
we're talking kind of the bigger ticket items on that side. So, shifting more towards like just call center. I mean, from what we've seen, call center is usually the most underdeveloped or abused portion of really any home services business. I'd say it's just an area where people pay the least attention to. And
hmm
as a result, like the most opportunities within that business or within that segment, especially when you run the math, right? Like, your cost per lead is ultimately a function, your cost per job is ultimately a function of, okay, what's your cost per lead? Like, what is your book rate? And then what is, how are your sales techs doing on the sales side? But like
Right.
each one of those is just as impactful as the other. So people are focusing on the techs, people are maybe focusing on the cost per lead, but they're
Uh-huh.
forgetting about like the call center. So I guess like, just going through like call center 101, what are just the things that are table stakes that either like inbound, either outbound, but even like just like inbound, that every contractor needs to make sure that, they're getting right, right? Like what is table stakes? And then, I'll let you kind of answer that. And then, afterwards, want to get a good sense of like, what does like good look like in a
Right.
call center?
Right. Yeah. So the table stakes, as you call them, you want to make sure that one, on the very basic level, do I have calls going missed right now? Are calls dropping on the inbound side? Because you never know when that one call is going to be a six-figure job for you that you didn't answer. And guess what?
Yeah.
Now that you didn't answer, they're going to the next person on Google that they saw. So at the most basic level, am I answering my calls? And then on the outbound side, what percentage of my base am I going after? Am I primarily calling my club members and like open estimates? Is that true for me? Do I have just my non-inactive customers like through a reactivation funnel of texting and emails? Because that's not usually enough to move the needle. And it's not usually enough to
Yeah.
keep those customers that you've seen retained to keep your cost per acquisition, your cost per lead at a low level, like you talked about. And so I would, from my lens at least, in outbound, really look at what am I going after right now? Do I have a dedicated approach? Am I being reactive right now instead of proactive with outbound? Because even though I said outbound is proactive, unfortunately, many people treat it reactive, which is not the right way to go about it. They wait till they're slow, the alarms start blaring. They're like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Let's start outbounding.
Yeah.
And if you have the right processes in place, you don't need to wait till the alarms are ringing. You can have a consistent outbound flow month over month over month, even in peak season. A lot of people believe when peak season happens, they can't do outbound. Yes, you could. You're not going to use it to fill your boards up more because you don't need it for that, but you can still have it in the background for something. And so it's a long-winded answer, but at the most basic level, again, just recap: do I have calls missing on the inbound side? How do I plug that gap? And on outbound, what am I going after and when am I going after it?
Yeah, so it sounds like outbound. I mean, for specifically certain industries, HVAC, HVAC and some others, that seasonality aspect is pretty key. So, and the seasonality, frankly, it poses a major operational challenge for a lot of, the clients that we work with. But that's, potentially a mechanism for mitigating that. And I guess,
Hmm.
even as we think about the seasons, like your cost per lead is going to change depending on the season, right?
Right.
So that's maybe a way to keep things a little more stable, when things are slow,
Yeah.
and you don't have to go spend as much money and not get results that you're looking for.
Everybody's complaining more and more these days about the cost per lead going up and what it's actually costing to acquire customers. And obviously, you need these verticals in place to help you grow and scale. But if that's a big pain point of yours, look at what's in your database because, like you said, it's going to be significantly less than what a new customer is going to cost you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to go back to the other point you're making about, inbound calls and, the missed calls, one concept you hear a lot about is like speed to lead when
Yeah.
it comes to inbound call centers. So what is like good and like what is bad? Because I mean, one client I'm working with right now, I mean, I've been looking through their calls and their average like pickup time is 1 minute, like 1.5 minutes.
On
But like,
calls,
what
or is
is
that on
good?
forums? Is that on forums coming in or
No,
calls that
that's
you're
on inbound calls, inbound calls. But it's like, yeah, what is the actually like, what is like average and what is like good? Is it like, you need to be picking up first ring type of thing? Like, what does the
Yeah.
average person have? And like, yeah, what is like really the top
So on
players have?
inbound, you definitely want to answer a lot faster than 60 seconds. People start hanging up. They don't want to be on hold that long. They want empathy is very important on inbound. So whatever they're calling about, they want to get it solved as fast as possible. And
Mm,
that comes into play as fast as picking up as soon as possible. That first ring is huge, like you talked about. And I'm not necessarily a complete inbound expert, but I know there's technologies out there these days like AI, that people might think of it as the enemy, but if you don't have AI embedded into your platform, you might be missing out on a lot of opportunity. And
yeah,
as simple as
absolutely.
picking up the phone, there's technologies like Avoca AI out there. We are building out a partnership with them, so shout out Avoca. But they have these systems and technologies in place these days where If you're not getting to your phone fast enough, it doesn't need to ring 60 seconds. It can overflow to these different technologies. It can zero out to human reps as well. And so you want to make sure that that speed of lead time though is definitely a lot lower than 60 within seconds on inbound.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly too, I mean, the other side of it is like sometimes you see like menus, for example. It's like
Right.
press one, for a new job, press two for an
Existing.
existing job. Do you recommend just completely getting rid of that and, first touch point, straight to a
Call
person, one
call,
ring?
personal touch, figure out exactly what's going on. They have numbers that you can tie into Service Titan or Housecall Pro and figure out if they are a customer, but just connect and talk to people in a timely manner. The flip side, which is what I asked you, is this like leads or web form that we're talking about speed of lead for.
Yeah.
That's another problem. People invest so much money into like lead aggregators like Home Advisor and Angie's. People fill out a form on your website. They are interested in using your product, and yet people take an hour, multiple hours, sometimes even a day to get back to these people because they're tied up. They're doing other things. They don't see it right away. And that is more than anything lighting money on fire right in front of your eyes. That you want to get to within 60 seconds. That comes in,
Oh yeah.
boom, you're calling within 60 seconds. So you can do that again by having technologies, have a dedicated team in place for these leads coming in. There's a lot of angles, but 60 seconds for form fills below that you want to be for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, that totally makes sense. And I guess, while we're thinking about, like the customer experience, I know that's something we discuss kind of separately, when you're doing outbounding. But even
Right.
like on an inbound, I mean, how does like a good customer experience on that first call translate downstream? Right? Because, you get a booking, you haven't necessarily sold anything yet. They're just,
Hmm.
you're going on site. But, just having like just a really tight process from, you know, that initial phone call to someone showing up at their door. I mean, have you had a chance to see kind of like what the impact is ultimately on like your ability to make a sale? Because if anything, it sounds like it would be better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times that first phone call is their first interaction with your company. The call center
Yeah.
is the heartbeat to your organization oftentimes. And so if that experience wasn't very well, one, it's going to affect your booking rate. You're not going to have a very high booking rate as much as you could or should. And then two,
Yeah.
even when you book that appointment, that first interaction that they're recalling is that phone call. Doesn't matter what the uniforms are, your trucks, your branding. A lot of times they resonate with what was that phone call I had. And so whether it's an incoming call or even outbound, when you're outbounding, a good experience that they had in that phone where you're able to build rapport is going to lead to higher closed jobs as well. Because if they connect with you and they trust you and they had a good experience with you, it's like anything in life. I can go places where I had the best experience of my life at like a theme park or a restaurant or a game I went to, and that sticks with me as a core memory. You want to provide such a great world class experience to your customers that is what resonates with them anytime that their service line that you're working in comes into a play. Their HVAC system breaks down. Oh, well, I'm going to call X, Y, and Z. Their plumbing's not working. I'm going to call X, Y, and Z. You got to stay top in mind, and an easy way to do that is how you're treating your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know from our side, like, we're looking through the numbers, we're looking through the metrics for our, for our clients, and like honestly, we tend to look at things just from a financial side, like
Yeah.
in a vacuum, right, on an isolated basis. But in reality, how it works is like, you have a really good impression. Like it's gonna not, it's gonna have an impact on the whole, the whole conversion rate, right? We're not just talking about bookings. It's, getting that job, upselling, even, retention, right? Like long
Hmm.
term, like, they have a good experience on that first call. Like they're more likely to be repeat business for you than someone who just didn't have a great experience
Yeah, and
at
if you're
all.
after new
So
business, the best way to get new business a lot of times is through your current base referring you out to family and friends and neighbors, and they're not going to do that if they don't have a good experience either.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's more, on the inbound side. So, I mean, talk to us about a little more on like, outbound
Uh-huh.
and, of course, like there's internal outbound you can run, there's external outbound, but like what's like, just so our viewers can have a general sense in terms of like comparison between the two and, when does it make sense to do it internally? When does it make sense to do externally? And like, what are like the general like metrics, right? Like, how many calls is someone making per day? how long does it take to do an outbound call? Like, what are the KPIs, you should be keeping, your people accountable to, whether it's inbound or whether it's internal or, external?
So I'll answer the first part of that question, which is it was when does it make sense to do it in-house or outsource it? I don't want to be biased here, but there's a power in delegation, right? And if you're trying to run outbound internally, a lot of times it's like running a business within your own business.
Yeah.
We've seen like billion-dollar entities that we've worked with that have multiple hundred-person seats, and it's not cost effective for them to try doing it internally because unfortunately, a lot of internal call center teams and any call center in general, for the most part, it has high turnover rate. You're constantly training and retraining and retaining, managing. And if you're doing it the correct way, it's not just having agents in place, but it's having trainers and coaches and quality assurance reviewing calls. And so when you look into it at that scale and for a $5 million shop, it's not realistic or cost effective to try building that out internally. And so there's a lot of power in delegation. If you can find the right partner that has those systems in place, that's doing it the right way, and they have been, trust them.
Yeah.
Give it off to them. Be a partnership model, not give it off in a vendor, but how can I be an extension to your team? And there's nothing that will ever beat that. That's my 2 cents on that from what I've seen. Plenty and hundreds of home service companies trying to do it internally, using us, going back internally, using us again. It's like it just is. It's a very difficult thing to try building that out
Yeah.
internally.
So
So
it's like, kind of a penny wise, pound foolish type of, situation. And,
right.
I tend to agree too. I mean, it's like, I think some people, they think of call centers, you put a body in a seat and that's kind of it. You let them just pick
Mhm.
up the calls, pick a dot, they're just kind of smiling and dialing and that's it. But there really is like another, if you want to do it really well, there's like another deeper layer, right? There's like
Right.
people, they're listening to every call. You got like a trainer. It's like, what are all the, how do you optimize all of the steps, in the call process?
Right.
What's the tone? Like, what is the optimal, metric as
Right.
far as like length? I
But,
mean,
yeah, if you are gonna do it internally, though, there is a way to do it. You just have to be very sophisticated about it, right?
yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. And like, yeah, I mean, what does that look like? Not even just like internally, so to speak, but more so like what are the things that are kind of like below the surface that people don't really like think about that much, but are like in reality, like you need to be doing it to have to do well in like outbound. Because I think outbound is going to be a lot harder than, picking up an inbound call, right?
right. There's compliancy, stuff that comes with it, so I'd encourage you, if you are doing this internally and you're not aware of the rules, look at the TCPA, Telephone Consumer Protection Act. Look at what it says about being able to reach out to an inquiry or being able to reach out to a past customer. That's a big thing that people don't really take into consideration as much on that. But beyond just the compliancy side, making sure that you have like defined KPIs of here's what I expect you to be at LPH, leads per hour. That's something we do for our agents. Here's what an overall conversion that we expect to hit this campaign through each dial attempt. And we're going to track
Yeah.
that each time we call through a list. We're going to huddle up and sit down and say, here's what we're at. Here's what we're on track for. Here's how many appointments that you need to hit that conversion rate for this campaign. You reverse engineer it a little bit, and you give people goals. And when you get your agents on the same page of a goal and there's actual numbers tied to it, hey, we need 50 appointments this day, and they're at 35 with half the list to go, everybody's cheering. They're like, we're going to overachieve on this list. We got
Yeah.
this. Like everybody's bought in when you have clear expectations. And so having those defined out, having the layers of quality assurance and people listening to the calls with the agents, continuous training, these are the layers that you talk about that most people just aren't really taking into consideration. But it's very important if you're going to be doing it internally that you treat it like a business that you're scaling up, having a manager, all these things.
Yeah, I mean, the way I'm thinking about it is almost, your comparison isn't really, whether you have an outbound call center or not. It's
Mhm.
really, yeah, like anyone could probably build like an outbound call center, but
Right.
it's more so an outbound call, like what we're really comparing is, two things, like having an outbound call center and then having one that's really optimized, right? And
Exactly. That's a great
then
word for it. Yeah.
the second dimension of that is also just time. Like how long, like, I mean, how long is it going to take for you to, firstly get a call center that's just working at a basic
hmm
level for outbound? And then how long is it going to take you to, if you're building it from scratch, like, how long does it take you to build an outbound call center that is working like really well, comparable to someone who's already, figured out? And it's like, how much is that, how much are you leaving on the table while you're doing all of that? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many things that go into it, but if you're looking to enhance your call center, you can do it very quickly and optimize it very quickly as long as you have the right people in place. And so if you're building out an outbound team or you have to reshift it right now when you're watching this, it's about having the right team in place. You know how we talked about you want the right inbound agents and the right outbound agents? Well, something
Yeah.
that we look for when we're hiring new reps is looking at care is what we call it. It's does someone have confidence? Are they assertive on the phone? Are they able to build rapport on the phone? And then are they enthusiastic? If someone has those characteristics, they usually are in a good spot to be trained into what your work environment is, your culture, your service offerings, and are going to be able to be a very winning piece to your formula. And then beyond that, look at your call center manager. Who's managing these people? Because if you have someone that's not enthusiastic, they're kind of like low tone, they're dead, they don't
Yeah.
have as much experience, like that's going to translate right to your call center reps. And so again, I'd encourage you to invest a lot of resources into someone that's done this before, someone that's ran call center floors, that is have a proven track record. Because if you get the right people in place and you get the right leader in place, it doesn't take too long to have something start generating revenue very, very, very quickly. Does that help answer your question? I know you asked also about like how long does it take to get from that starting point to being fully optimized? That is an ongoing process. Sometimes
Yeah.
people find success in the craft, Raymond, and they're like crushing it. They just got $200,000 in a month pulled through outbound campaigns that they generated, and they get kind of complacent and satisfied. But even for us, like it's all about continuous improvement and training. We're at a
Yeah.
5% conversion right now. How do we get to 6? Are we at 6? How do we really push limits to get to 7? Because the second complacency hits any arena, I don't care what work field you're in, it's the second that things start to take a downward trend. And so you always got to be looking to improve continuously and training to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's the learning curve, right? It's like how long does it take you get, to get up that learning curve? And also, what you're saying is like to give you guys some credit, it's easier said than done because I mean, within a home services business, it's no secret that the CSR is, you look at all the roles, it is the lowest paid position in a home services business. So it's like finding the right people and retaining them it is difficult, and keeping them motivated, and
Yeah.
just by definition this is a role in to some extent which is like a bit of a churn and burn. So like
Churn and burn.
yeah, you are you're doing outbound calls, like yeah, you get burned out from doing that.
Do you know what
And
the average churn rate for an outbound call center agent is?
no, tell me. I mean, I feel like it's like 2 months or something.
Yeah. Well, not even time-wise. I'm talking overall percentage. So the last study I looked at, it was like over 70% revolving door in an outbound
Oh
call center
wow.
environment. Elite call is at a 72% retention of our agents. And like that's unheard of in the space. And people ask why, and it's no different than your main business. We talked about how people focus on the techs and they focus on closing rates and average tickets, but sometimes they forget that call center piece. It's the fact that you need to give people a position where they're able to grow within the environment that they're in. Give them an environment where they know they're cared about and they know that it's not I have to come to work. It's I get to come to work type of culture. And all of a sudden you're going to be on the flip side of that equation. It's giving them room to grow, showing them that they're appreciated and cared about, and they're going to start caring about what they're doing on those phones.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, honestly, from what I've seen, even on just on the inbound side, actually just hiring people that care about what they're doing.
Mhm.
Especially, again, like you know, it's nothing to do with the individual, but it's more so even just the role. It is the lowest paid role typically in a home services business. So, it is hard to get someone really excited about coming to work, every day as part of that. But yeah, like, caring about what they're doing, just making sure
Mhm.
they're, even just getting the basics right is really important, right?
Pay them well too and incentivize them. You can afford to pay an outbound rep more money than what the norm is if it's incentivized, like bonus. Hit this many appointments and you get X bonus. Generate this much revenue and get X bonus. Have leaderboards where they're able to see and compete against each other. We have a thing here where if they hit a certain amount of leads in a day, they get to do a mini putt, and if they hit it, they get like $50 bonus or $100 bonus. You should see the whole call center floor will huddle around that top performing rep seeing if they're gonna putt it. They feel like Tiger Woods out there. They're loving it, man. They're all super incentivized, and it's a fun culture. And if you can get that instilled into your call center, it's going to be even more optimized and less
Yeah.
churn and burn, like we just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's aligned with, what we recommend for our clients. It's just anything performance related, especially in a role like this. Again, it's like, you know, the booking rate actually materially moves the needle. Like anything like call center related, customer related, that actually does move the needle in terms of revenue, just as much as, if you think about like text, your tech conversion rate or really kind of your ads, right? This is just a third element that it's just as impactful that people pay less attention to. So, setting that performance based, compensation, just having that, that nature that encourages, performance, that actually does move the needle a lot.
Yeah, it will
For
in all
for
aspects.
the contractors. So yeah, those are kind of the things that, I got in terms of, questions. Appreciate everyone kind of listening in. I mean, Tim, like, do you have any, kind of ending notes on your side? Anything kind of, our clients or, contractors on our website should be, aware of or know of for their business?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'd really like to just reinforce the fact that you're probably not optimizing what's sitting in your base enough, and the easiest ways to do that is going to be through outbound phone calls. And I don't think there's one strategy that's going to do it either. Like people watching this might be thinking again. I'll go back to that. I'm texting my base low. I'm running retargeted ads. I'm running emails to them. And those things are all fantastic. You need them. But there's nothing quite like an outbound phone call where they get to connect with your rep. They have that world-class customer experience that we talked about, what that will do for your business. It's nothing
Yeah.
as proactive as it where instead of putting something out there and waiting for someone to respond to it and book with you, you're actually building value with these people in urgency and getting things scheduled live time. And so if you're not doing outbound to your entire base and you're not doing it throughout a 12-month calendar year, I would figure out why and I would start to figure out how. And if you need any help with that, feel free to talk to me or anyone on the Elite Call team, and we'll give any insight that we could on what works and what doesn't work, and would be happy to help.
Yeah, and absolutely. I highly recommend, working with Tim and Elite Call, and we'll have the contact information description or kind of on the page when we post this. So should be able to reach out to Tim at any time.
Yes, and a bonus nugget for anybody that stayed here. So to this point, if you want the right scripting framework for outbound, it's very quite simple. Inbound, like I said earlier, is empathy based, that you're going to solve whatever problem they're calling about. On outbound, tons of studies out there, and we've had tons of success with this. They want to feel appreciated and feel valued as your customer. And so, whatever campaign type you're running throughout the month, figure out what you're in need of. Is it my boards are dead? I need to fill them up. Am I after more membership enrollments? Do I need more install demand? Figure out whatever campaign type you need, and the scripting all stays relatively the same. It's thanking Raymond for being a loyal customer or a past customer based off how long it's been, not with empty words, hey, thanks for being a loyal customer, but with conviction and enthusiasm. Thank them for being a customer. That opens up the door for a promotion value for whatever it is that you're trying to achieve that month. If it's a tune-up, let's just say, because of that, Raymond, we wanted to offer you your annual AC tune-up. Usually it's 189, but for you, we're just doing it for 59, and then that opens up the door for urgency. We're getting filled up pretty quickly with this offer. I want to get you scheduled. I have availability this time or that time. So the three frameworks is show appreciation and value. That opens up the door for whatever promotion you want to give. and then urgency to get it scheduled. If you could follow that flow, you'll have very, 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 very good success on what you're trying to achieve with Outbound.
Absolutely.
There
Absolutely.
you go. There you go. Dropping nuggets out here, Raymond.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, on that note, appreciate everyone watching the video. We'll be doing more of these, just really kind of, focusing on like what, the needle movers, the 80/20, and what's actually going to kind of, be game changers for your business. So we'll have more of these, but this was, Tim with Elite Call, and, hope it was helpful for everyone. Thank you.
Peace.